Could you imagine sitting in your living room, you've got this gorgeous view, and you're looking out and you just hear this pop and crank and you're feeling your whole thing shift like this? Things you didn't really think about when you bought that $88 million condo, right? I mean, yeah, you're going to be the top of the world, but you're going to feel like you're in a windstorm every time that wind blows. That would stink.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt, that is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, Thursday, February the 4th, the big game, the Super Bowl is coming up. Any predictions?
Man, it's tough. Brady is an animal. He's totally transformed Tampa Bay's team, and it's amazing that he's there, you know? So I can't bet against the guy. Although Mahomes, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, the guy's amazing as well. So I don't know. I mean, I don't follow, those teams that closely, but I can't bet against Brady, man.
Yeah.
He's a nut. He's an animal.
This video is going to be posted on YouTube the day after the Super Bowl. And I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right.
And if I'm wrong, then, this is the week of just bold predictions. So,
yeah.
Guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about three main topics going on in the real estate industry. One is happening in our own backyard of Arlington, Virginia. We're going to be talking about Amazon. We're going to be talking about a certain building in Manhattan, and we're going to be talking about 5 myths about transitioning from renter to homeowner. Shawn, the big news in Arlington is the Amazon Helix, the futuristic, nature-inspired Phase 2 of HQ2. This is part of the Penn Place development in National Landing along Army-Navy Drive, and it's the second phase of the $2.5 billion HQ2 in Pentagon City. The whole HQ2 has kind of run its course of, making news headlines, but this is grabbing everyone's headlines simply because of the crazy shape that it's in, known as a helix inspired by the double helix. So Shawn, when you first saw this design, what'd you think?
I was blown away. I think it's really cool. Something unique to bring to the area. I'm just going to say I like it. I think it's what they're trying to do is infuse nature with this design. So it's got trees running up that helix. Oddly enough, I just got my hair cut, and I wanted to figure out, because I know where the one site is, which is called, what's it called, Matt?
Metropolitan Park.
Metropolitan Park. And so I wanted to get my bearings on where this was, and it's only about 2.5 blocks down the street. It's on Army-Navy Drive, so it's that main road right next to 395. There's an old, if you remember where they used to do those circuses, there was an empty lot right there. It's right next to that. That's where the old site is, the old, it was a hotel being taken down. So it's going to be an awesome thing. You're going to be able to see it as you drive into DC. It'll be on your right-hand side. Very cool. So there's going to be 3, I believe, right? 3 office buildings and then this double helix building.
I used to deliver pizzas to that hotel
Yeah,
that is getting torn down.
Like, this guy's done everything, man.
There's nothing like knowing a neighborhood, like delivering pizzas, when you're a college student. That's how you really get to know the neighborhood, when you're tearing through the neighborhood in your little Saturn S1.
There you go.
Well, have you been to Seattle? Have you seen the spheres of downtown Amazon, Seattle?
I have not. Have you?
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I walked around it. They have these little spheres. That's if you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. And it's a really cool downtown feature to the Amazon office, and it's similar to the Helix in a sense that it's much different than anything around. It catches your attention. The spheres, they offer tours on certain days. When I went, you had to have your ID, you had to have this, you had to have that, Amazon ID, so we couldn't, access it. But it looks like the Helix is going to be open for tours or for walking or for climbing to the public at some point. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. And ultimately, Amazon's creating a footprint in National Landing, and I think it's a really cool change of pace from the monotonous brown and beige buildings that we've come to, brutalist style that we've come to see all throughout Arlington, and especially driving through Crystal City, is quite possibly the most depressing thing ever, just because you have these like 1970s and 1980s like basic brown buildings. So the fact that you can, be driving on the highway or driving down South Eads and you see something that breaks up your eye, and even if they get half the amount of trees, that this picture shows, I think it's going to be a really cool add to the landscape of the area.
Absolutely, and to see that transformation, my wife and I owned a condo. It was actually my wife's condo in the Bella Vista, which is right across 1211 South Eads Street. So it was literally right across the street from this site. And to see that whole transformation, I mean, before it was just a big long warehouse, which is now a grocery store. And now this whole lot and the next door hotel is going to be transformed. It's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. And guys, don't sleep on the condo market right now, because I'm telling you, right now, the article says right now they have hired about 1,400 or 1,600 total employees. And this is all going to be done, one site's going to be done, they're hoping in 2023, and then the next site they're hoping 2025. 25,000 total workers, and we've only just begun. So right now there's a little bit of a lull in the condo market. It's a great time to invest because it's going to roar back. And the one thing about Amazon and all of these big corporations is they're not sleeping on office space. They know that they need to keep their people together in an office environment, and they're investing in this. And so what does that mean for our local market? People are going to have to commute into these buildings. So I know that they're going to have a 950 parking spots for bikes, and then an underground parking. I'm getting another call. Underground parking garage for like 2,100 cars or something.
Yeah, and you make a really good point about commuting to this place, and I think it's more so going to be a really cool campus as opposed to like a destination. Like, let's go hang out at the Helix, or let's go hang out at the park, because in Seattle, no one goes to downtown Seattle and says, let's go hang out at the Spheres. But here, you're going to have a 200-seat amphitheater, 100,000 square feet of retail square feet, a dog run, daycare, and community space. So I think if you have this environment where maybe you move to the area and you live at Bella Vista, and then you can walk to work, and you're sort of already in that environment, then this is a huge community amenity to have when you have all this green space and an active place where you can do multiple activities throughout the day. And the article does go on to mention that this is going to be an 18-hour district open to the public, enlivened by local arts, including a residence program at the Helix, and local businesses will also be incorporated into the campus. Now, Amazon has, I've seen them take a little bit of a hit in the media recently, something about requiring people voting, in person as opposed to mail-in votes. And Amazon has got some negative news recently, and they're weathering a storm right now, because a lot of people have been making some clamorings about this large corporation that doesn't pay taxes, and whether or not that's good for the collective well-being. What Amazon is saying, and what their spokesperson is saying, is that they are reinforcing their idea of being a good neighbor. They've contributed to affordable housing. So they're doing all the right things on paper. So I'm intrigued. I hope this design gets approved. It's certainly in the design process, but it'll be interesting to see as we move forward throughout the process if this ends up coming to life.
Yeah, I love the design. I hope it does get approved. I believe I think I read that they're also connecting the two sites with some sort of walkway or bridge or something. It's about a 2.5 block. I mean, these are big blocks. They're to each site. So I think is that right?
That's right. Metropolitan Park Penn Place will be connected by a planned pedestrian passageway. You know what's really cool in New York City is the High Line, where you can walk from a couple different neighborhoods. It used to be an old railroad track.
Oh,
so
yeah, that is cool. Yeah.
if the planned pedestrian passageway is anything like the High Line in New York City, that'd be a pretty cool
That
amenity
would
to
be
have.
nice.
Okay, our second topic is in regards to a certain condominium building in Manhattan, 432 Park Avenue in Billionaires Row, or close to Billionaires Row. This complex is a $3.1 billion project. It was one of the first skinny skyscrapers, which were all the rage. The article, it says a funny terminology. It was erected in Manhattan half a decade ago. Why not just say 5 years ago?
I know, it seems so much longer when you say half a decade, but I was like, that's only 5 years ago. And
Yeah, are they trying to spin it where it's like, it's half a decade? But they don't need to spin it. There's no spin necessary because there are some major issues. This is a building that is 1,400 square feet tall. Shawn, the tallest buildings in Arlington are what? 300, 350 feet? So if your building is 1,000 feet taller than the tallest building in Arlington, these are massive skyscrapers and they're very skinny. And I've watched some YouTube videos about, like, because the first thought is, how does it not just topple over, right? You look at the building
That's true.
and you're like, why doesn't this thing just fall over? And so there's a lot of really cool YouTube videos about how they make these buildings. And, you know, they build the sway into it. So they know it's going to sway and they have this technology. But along with the swaying comes some unexpected problems, as some of the residents have come to find out. Things like elevator shafts not working, cables getting caught because of the high winds. One resident was even in a elevator for 90 minutes in 2019 due to a high wind condition. I mean, I'm in a building that has 18 stories, and when one of the 3 elevators is out and you go to the elevator lobby, there's a line of people waiting to get into the elevator. Imagine if your building is, what, 80 stories tall? I'm trying to figure out how many.
it's probably close to 100 story. I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And the elevator was completely out, right?
Yeah.
I think it was completely
I think
out.
yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I've been to New York a bunch over the years, and I actually saw that thing for the first time, and I'm like, holy cow, look how thin this thing is, right? And if you know New York City, it's just south of
The park.
Yeah, the park. I can't even think.
The part
It's
that's
like-
in the central.
Yeah,
of
no,
New
the
York.
central part,
Yeah.
that central thing, yeah. Yeah, we're like Arlington people talking about New York City, they don't know what they're talking about. Anyways, it's a really cool looking building because it's just so thin, it's like a pencil sitting there. And if you think about it, all right, so when I was younger, I used to work in the World Trade Center, right? So I was on the 69th floor of Tower 1 in the World Trade Center. And the World Trade Center was a huge, massive building, big towers. I mean, they were so many times wider and larger. And on the 69th floor, I could feel that thing swaying, right? You can tell and you can hear things, you know, in those buildings. Now imagine being on the top floor of this thing, right? Because I think one of these guys paid $88 million. That's the thing we're talking about, is these are not cheap condos. These are millions and millions of dollars each.
And I want to make one thing clear. I don't think anyone is shedding a tear over a Saudi billionaire buying a $88 million condo. So, you know, we're not so much as saying, oh, it's terrible from the point of view of, you know, I think something like 40 out of the 104 or 140 residences have had some sort of issue or some sort of gripe. So, I mean, where do we go from here? Because it's not just like a house that was newly bought and then you sue the developer. These are millions and millions of dollars worth of property. 40, property owners are upset along those lines. And now you have an entire building that is mad at the developer. And if you look up 432 Park, there's still 3 condos for sale that, have never been lived in before. But that website's going to get buried by all this bad press. So, I mean, in terms of a condo building that has such significant problems where it looks like a lot of people want out, where do you even go from here?
I don't know. They talk about the noises. Could you imagine sitting in your living room, you've got this gorgeous view, and you're looking out and you just hear this pop and crank and you're feeling your whole thing shift like this? Things you didn't really think about when you bought that $88 million condo, right? I mean, yeah, you're going to be the top of the world, but you're going to feel like you're in a windstorm every time that wind blows. That would stink.
In addition, there was also major catastrophic water flood. They say water flood.
Yeah, flooding.
Catastrophic flooding caused major damage to the units on the 83rd, 84th, 85th, and 86th story, which caused one potential buyer to back out of their $46 million apartment. So it's not just the wind, it's not just the elevator. I mean, this is a condo project, so you're going to have the water problems as well. So now you have all these sorts of issues, and the article does mention A-Rod and J-Lo. This is a building that they were in, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Class A celebrities. They actually bought and then sold
Good for them.
a few years ago, and quote unquote like made some money. Sold it for more than they bought it for. But
they said that the people are just mad at each other, right? There's the air inside the building is not good. And think about this. Trash, right? Where does the trash go? Some people were saying that when you drop the trash in the slot on your floor, it sounds like a bomb's going off when that thing hits. So they didn't think about the logistics of the trash chute, where it's going and how loud that thing is when that trash hits. Because, I'm assuming there's different stops for each one, but can you imagine living on the floor or just hearing that reverberate through the whole place when the trash hits the bottom?
Yeah, and we have some condos and apartment buildings in Arlington where, like, when you open up the unit door to the hallway, you'll, like, kind of feel like a gust of air.
Or like a suction. It's like,
yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Imagine if you're, and that might be on the 10th story. Imagine you're on the 50th or 60th story. That could be magnified as well. And, I'm just seeing these huge condo projects, and what's the next step if the building doesn't get built, or if everyone sues the developer? Like in Arlington, there's the Pierce condominium. Like if for some reason no one moves in there or they don't sell out, I was working with a buyer and they were asking some really good questions a while ago of like, okay, well, what if only 20 people, buy condos, or what if, 30...
Oh, it's happened.
Does that go back to apartments? Does that go on an auction block? What happens in that scenario?
All of the above. I've seen it happen. In DC, my wife at the time was selling condos from developers, and they couldn't sell all of the units, and that's when the whole economy tanked. And basically the developer just went bankrupt and had to sell the house, or sell the whole building. There's one here in Arlington which was called the Jewel, which was then sold, converted, blah blah blah. So think about being a sales agent in one of these things, right? You get paid when they close, and going through all of these sales, and you have a third of them sold, and then all of a sudden stuff goes south and all these buyers want out because you can't deliver. And you can't deliver because not enough are settling, so you can't get the loans, and there's just a catastrophic thing that happens, and you don't get paid, and everybody loses. So,
a few other notes about 432 Park. When residents moved in, they were required to spend $1,200 per year to eat in a downstairs restaurant. That figure is now up to $15,000 per year, even though the restaurant has cut back its hours due to the pandemic. In addition, insurance costs have risen something like 300% in the past 2 years. So finally, common charges, condo fees rose 40% in 2019. So I don't want to call it a bait and switch, but if you're moving into a condo and you paid, 15, 20, 25 million dollars, it looks like these people are, at least some of them, are having some buyer's remorse.
Yeah, and you've always got to watch the budgeting for condo fees. When a builder builds something, a lot of times they're not budgeting correctly, and those fees are lower than they actually should be. And it's kind of like, almost like, hey, they're going to be great and get you in, and then once you get in, those things can go up. We've seen it happen a lot, and it totally changes the affordability of that unit. So be careful.
Let's finish it out with 5 myths about becoming a homeowner. This is transitioning from renting to owning, an article on Realtor.com. Myth number 1, buying a home means heavy debts. This to me doesn't seem like a myth. The author argues appreciation, tax breaks, yada yada yada. It's you're still going into debt. You're still going to have a large note on that house.
You're naturally going to have a big debt. That's the biggest thing in your life that you're going to buy, and it's going to be the biggest debt you have. But in the end, are you paying down an asset with your mortgage, or are you just going to throw it into rent? And that's a question that you've got to ask yourself, because some people just love the freedom of renting. They never have to worry about, hey, where am I going to move next year? Because they can move anytime they want and not have to worry about it. So there's something to be said about it.
Yeah, you can always make the argument about interest rates or about appreciation, tax breaks. But let's not forget, when you're signing papers, you're getting a loan and you're going into debt to do that. Myth number 2, at least 20% down is needed as a down payment to buy a house. That is absolutely a myth, something I agree with. Most of the buyers that I work with are putting anywhere from sometimes 0% down, but usually anywhere from 5 to 15% down to buy a house. And then, of course, you do have those buyers that are putting down 20%.
Yeah, you think about areas like we live in, a one-bedroom condo is $400,000 on the low side, so 20% down is $80,000. How a lot of people don't have $80,000 to put down, and that's on the low side of the market here. So remember, you can do 100% financing, you can put 3%, 5%, whatever down, and there's always thoughts to this, is like, all right, do I wait to put 20% down? Well, look at the market. If the market is trending upward and you're waiting and waiting, then you're going to end up spending more in the future because you waited for your 20% down. So sometimes it just makes more sense to get in, and then, as we talked about last week, as your property values increase, you refinance it later when the rates go down. You've got a higher loan to value or a lower loan to value in your property.
Number 3, the third myth, your credit score needs to be perfect. Having a credit score at or above 660 looks great to mortgage lenders, but if yours is lagging, there's still hope. Now, I'm going to take a different route. I think if you have a good credit score, that's obviously going to get you the best rate. If you have a credit score under 660, I'd want to learn more about why it's under 660, what outstanding debts you have, and if now is the right time to buy a house. Because if your credit score is in the tank, why are you going into more debt? Maybe it makes sense to pay off that debt first before taking on another huge note.
Yeah, I think it's a red flag if you're at 660, because where you really want it, and where I think this changes a lot, but where they used to want it is at least a 720 to get the better rates. So if your credit score is lower at 660, you're going to pay a higher rate. And so why not, in that instance, work on getting your credit better? There's things that you can do pretty quickly to increase your credit score and get it up there. So work with a lender, call that lender and say, all right, what should I do in this instance to get better credit? And sometimes it's opening a credit card, having your phone bill paid through your credit card and paying it off every month. Just a cycle, a circle. And that will help increase it and get rid of the negatives on your credit too. So sometimes there's negatives on there that you didn't realize were there.
So the article is obviously advocating for home buying, and it's almost like they're advocating for home buying in every scenario. They're preaching about FHA loans, which are arguably the least desirable type of loan. So if you're considering purchasing a house and you have a credit score of under 660, how many outstanding credit card, debts do you have? What do your student debts look like? Do you have a significant car payment? I would focus more on getting your debt to income ratio straight. The house is going to be there. The $300,000 loan, the $500,000 loan, whatever it may be, it's always going to be there. But, I'm really concerned about someone who has a low 600 credit score that is looking to take on additional debt.
I agree with you.
Number 4, now is a bad time to buy during a buyer's market is a during a seller's market is a bad time to buy. It depends. So just like everything, it depends, because right now we're seeing a lot of opportunities in a market like this. Maybe certain properties that were at a high price that have come down, maybe condos, maybe there's an off-market opportunity. Now is a bad time to buy is a generalization and is a cop-out to reach as many people as possible. Whether or not it's a good time to buy will depend on your personal financial situation.
That's what we always say. Buy when you're ready. Don't buy when you think you should buy. Timing the market is almost impossible. We don't know what the future holds. I mean, right now we believe that in our area, Amazon's going to have a huge increase in values. We've seen a huge increase in values, and we continue to see that. But anything can happen. I mean, markets can change, and we never know what the perfect time to buy is. So go on what feels right for you and your family.
Agreed. And finally, myth number 5, you'll be stuck and can't relocate. And, you know, with this one, I agree with the article that, you know, you probably want to be in your next property for at least 3 years if you're thinking about buying. If you end up buying and you move out, you know, and you sell within 3 years, chances are you probably didn't make any money. Maybe you broke even, or maybe you lost money, or you know, maybe you bought right before Amazon announced and then sold after and made some money. But the idea that you'll be stuck and can't relocate, yes, to an extent, but depending on the rental market, depending on how quickly the sale market moves, there are always ways to rent out properties usually and to get out of properties to sell. So would definitely, you know, want to know your future plans. Hopefully you're going to stay there for at least a couple of years.
Yeah. I use me as an example. I bought a condo in 2005, and the market tanked. And my vision was, all right, I'm going to hang on to this for a couple of years, and then I'll sell it at a profit. But the opposite happened. The market fell, and so I actually could have been stuck, right? But what I ended up doing was renting it out. I rented it out at a loss per month. So financially, you know, it didn't make sense for me for a long time, and I went and rented somewhere else for a while. So I was still able to do it, but there was that downside of losing, you know, a couple $100 a month. But at the same time, the renter was then paying down my mortgage. And what happened was, over a long year, 13-year period that I owned it, it was paid down. And so then I walked with some money, you know. So yes, I can see how you could be straddled, you could be stuck, but truthfully, you can always find a way.
How good was that feeling when you sold that condo?
That was awesome, man. And you know what? I did it at the right time. I mean, looking back now, I was like, all right, is now the time? And when I finally saw the property values go up about $25,000 from their low, I was like, you know what? I don't think it's going beyond this, because I'd lived in there for a long time, and it was one of these rehab properties that doesn't look too good from the outside. The inside was cute, outside not so good. It's an old town property, you know, but I think I timed it, you know, not knowing how to time or not saying, hey, don't try to time the market, but I think I timed it correctly on that one.
Looking back, I think you did.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not so much on the buy, but definitely
on the buy, not so much.
But when you sold it, I think that may have been around the time when you paid off your truck as well. So between those two payments, that's almost like a part-time job.
I took the proceeds from my sale and I paid off my truck. So that was a loss on the rental side and a payment that was pretty big.
Yeah.
So it was freedom. Yeah, it was nice.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, that's all we got for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions or comments, be sure to drop them in the comment section below. Hit the thumbs up button if you made it this far. Subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.